A dream.
Thousands of flights have been canceled, hundreds of people in nursing homes are evacuated in low-lying areas.
That's not Sandy, that's the new storm.
That's the new storm, and
it's heading for your house.
A dream. The storm found them all. A dream. The storm found them all. Uprooted or cracked by the furious winds. A dream. The storm found them all. A dream. Time of dying. The time after death. The time between birth and death. The in-between places. A sneeze. An orgasm. A dream.
Oh God, of all worlds and time, please look with pity on the errors of our nature. May our errors not become our calamities. You didn't give us hearts so we should hate each other, or hands so we should strangle each other. Let's help each other through a painful and transitory life. Let us be friends. Let us hold in horror any tyranny held over our souls. And let us praise in 1,000 languages, from Siam to California, your goodness, which has given us this moment. the ritual objects which put us back in touch with the plant world, with Mother Earth, with the jungle, with the tremendum.
A dream.
Wonderful, Josh. Thank you for sharing that with us. And you're a tough host to follow in terms of someone interviewing. So the list is was short when we realized that the names needed to be the same. So it's a pleasure to be here and diving into your mind a little bit about this film. Could you set us up a little bit on sort of the settings, the time frame, what part you were in your journey of creating this? I know this is filmed at the end. We saw a lot of it's on the place called Shantigar, and I'd love to kind of know sort of the setting and some of the inspirations that led you to create this.
Yeah, and thank you so much, Josh, for choosing to interview me and to talk about this film, which is really near and dear to my heart. Just watching it now, it's it's so personal because of where it was filmed and who was involved in making it. When I think about filmmaking, I think when a lot of people think about filmmaking, I should say, you think about big budgets and really intense schedules. But this film was a group of people who had a conversation and then went outside and turned on the camera. We were, like many people in 2012, talking about the end of history and the beginning of history and historical cycles because of the Mayan calendar. And then Hurricane Sandy came towards the end of the year. It seemed like maybe it was the end of something, that things were breaking down. There's the shot of New York City losing power, which is a kind of iconic image, and the lights going off and power being lost. You see that also with these long shots of the power lines, which are this intensely symbolic image for me of our civilization, of our attempts to control every aspect. And there you are, the scars on the landscape of Shantigar, which is actually 400 acres of old growth forest that we've conserved, and is for me where I learned to really connect with nature. After living in New York City for a decade, suddenly I found myself in this place of such beauty and just less human impact. It taught me so much about how to find strength and how to find inspiration all around us, as kind of we were talking about with Louis. So this film is mostly shot there. You'll see the opening scene is in an apartment in Brooklyn. Then the dream kind of commences, or perhaps it starts at the beginning. I don't know. I don't know if everybody heard, but at the beginning, the first thing that you hear is a dream, and then the images come on. But yeah, this film happened together. It was really collaborative, although I did create the story more or less afterwards. We filmed things, and then I made a story kind of around what we had been talking about.
Wonderful. I love one of the powerful lines again up front is "the storm found them all," and I think it's a really nice piece to include in this segment this week. It took me a little bit to sort of see how this fits into gratitude, and yet I think our audience appreciates how a well-rounded journey includes some sort of tension, some sort of strife or conflict, and you can feel this in the score. You can feel just the way that this is composed. I even, the sort of rough on the edges filmmaking quality, the cinema verite. You're really there. It's wonderful, and I think helpful to include paired against something as sort of warm and fuzzy as Louis Schwartzberg in your interview and the wonderful questions. It's nice to remember that the storm is, here as well, and we're still. These are constant concerns, and how do we live within that storm and find the gratitude in the spaces that aren't always comfortable? And what are some of the takeaways and lessons? So the question for you really is, what are some ways, and you touched on this with Louis, but that you transmute some of this storm into creativity, into gratitude, or presence?
Yeah. I have a friend who notably for me said, "Peace is the struggle." So within that, there is the storm, as you're pointing out. In fact, the other title for the film I was going to use was "After the Storm," and as a foothold or a mythic note about history, about civilization, what comes after the storm of that, and in the kind of aftermath, these kind of male characters are kind of closing up shop, and they're doing it in this way that has a lot of meaning and gratitude. They do it in a way that is slow, that is that allows them to feel what they're doing rather than just going about it. I try to do that myself. I try to cultivate practices that allow me to feel more, to be with what I'm doing, to be with who I'm listening to or speaking with. Creativity itself is part of that storm, is something that, I don't know about you, but it's almost like a byproduct in terms of it allows me to wrestle with so much as well, energy, right? My kind of intensity, which I have inside of me, but in this constructive way, rather than allowing it to build up or make me pent up and neurotic and all this. Instead, the storm passes through, and then I have a piece of writing or a film or maybe a piece of music, which is kind of it's strange. It's so strange what comes through, because it doesn't feel like me a lot of times. A lot of times it feels like just something that, almost like if you get shocked and you inherit the current of that electricity, and then it just passes through you if you were to pass it off. So the other thing I'll say in terms of my own practices is I really do try to take time away from the screens every day, because as a filmmaker, as a writer, it's kind of where my work happens, as well as meetings and calls and things like that. But I really try and spend time outside. I really hope that everybody has access to that, even if it's just going for a walk around the block. But yeah, fresh air, trees, taking in something that you haven't seen before, just noticing things. Kind of like Louis was saying, he's got it too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's great. I to that point, I know Jean-Claude has been a wonderful friend to you and influence. And I'd love for you to share a little bit about his philosophy or his approach. Clearly, that was a large part of the film for me. This he sort of embodies the magician. And I know at one point you had the magician's dream. Perhaps you could explain his role in the film and some of the influence. I know he's accessing this presence within nature so beautifully, poetically, with some of that long branch at points. But I'd love to hear more from you about your experience with him.
Yeah. That image in the film at the beginning of the magician's dream of him, it's just he's on the ground and it's panning over. That is iconic Jean-Claude. He's just full of wonder and so present as well. He's so open, so available, so creative, and so warm. Jean-Claude Van Italy has been such a profound influence on me among many. He's helped so many, and I'm one of them. He taught me how to live well, how to live artistically, how to live life, becoming alive, more alive, appreciating, asking questions, being just endlessly curious. And he also was someone who believed in me as an artist when other people hadn't necessarily ever expressed that. So he's given me so much. It's hard to, there's no quantitative way to put it. But most of learning how to live, what I mean is I spent time around him at Shantigar. I was fortunate enough to be invited there and to be invited as an artist and to hold events and do things there. So part of it was just seeing his relationship with the land there and how he clears forests. He does a form of land stewardship where he has a Zen path in the forest that he spends time clearing dead branches so that the undergrowth doesn't build up. So there in the forest at Shantigar, there's a good swath of it that is actually quite clear. You can see through and you can move around very well. It's also good for the trees. As we know in fire management, traditional fire management, you need to clear the underbrush so that it's protected. It actually works better. But it's also a personal meditation practice for him. And seeing the power of that and seeing how he is shaped by the land, by spending so much time literally touching it and moving it and working with it and knowing it and learning it. It taught me so much about that. But then also his kind of housekeeping style too, which at first for me there were a lot of rules to encounter, but in the end taught me a lot about living elegantly, living simply, only having as much in my life as I'm willing to take care of and take responsibility for in my home. And that also translates into relationships. So Jean-Claude has been just a crucial influence in my life, and I just love him so much, and he's a great friend.
Well, I think his spirit comes through in the film. Certainly for me, I got a sense of the gravity with which he carries. And I particularly like the imagery of raking in the forest. Is that it kind of, and correct me if I'm wrong, but is that exactly what you're describing, this practice that is meditation, but also practical and clearing the underbrush?
Yeah, it's it's fun for me that you bring that up, because I think that the raking the forest is almost, it takes it to an absurd. It's
Yeah.
I don't know if I really want it. I'm trying to think if I meant it to be that absurd, but when I see it now, I think, yeah, that's a bit absurd. But there is that sense of taking care of the land, of even or of the sand rakes in Zen gardens, where you're just doing it as an aesthetic sensibility. But there's the visceral feeling of it too, and I like that in terms of using it in the film. That it doesn't seem practical as this image of something that's not practical, but it's personal, it's meaningful, and it's also connecting with the land. So that's kind of why it's in there. Or yeah.
Nice. Well, I think it segues wonderfully for the sense of the storm, the challenges, and the futility as one person in this storm. But I think as a way to close the film and to bring us back to this, prompt or theme or idea of gratitude, it warms my heart. And I've, ever since you shared the film a few days ago, have been thinking about that scene at the end, and imagining the last time I really caressed land or moss or rock. And it's people could say it's kind of goofy and getting your hands dirty and we're so disconnected, but it's, there's something so tender in that last shot that I'd love to leave our audience with, as a way to sort of answer the call of what can life be after this storm? And perhaps you could speak to a little bit of the message you wanted to leave people with at the end of this film.
Yeah, well, it's part of this conversation of the kind of return of the divine feminine in our culture, where we're not building up ourselves, building up our civilization for purposes of competition, domination, but that we're in parallel, we belong, that we're part of everything, that we're in partnership with our world, with nature, with each other. And for me, that is something that has always existed, despite the weather, despite the tumult. It's something that's there, it's waiting for us. It's something that is a source of inspiration and energy that can bring us into a state of balance, not only in our mindset, in our creativity, our efforts, our relationships, but also allows us to cooperate, that we can touch nature, that we need only reach out, and that it's there for us, and that we can come back to that whenever we need it. So in a troubled world, in a fallen world, there's always a source of strength. There's always a way to appreciate what we have. And maybe that's simple, but it's powerful when you let yourself experience it, I think.
I love how that echoes your earlier conversation with Louis, just stepping outside and looking at the flowers. It is, again, a simple message, but it can be so deeply healing, just that pause within nature. So thank you for bringing this to everybody, for speaking about it today, and I look forward to seeing more of your work out there and in the collective.
Thanks for sharing it with me, Josh. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, wonderful.